Alright, so before I bolt this flywheel down to the tractor motor, there's a couple things I want to do to it. First thing I need to do is I got to put the pilot bearing in, which I'll get to that here in a little bit. Second thing is this starter ring gear. It's pretty wore out, especially right in this area. So to replace this ring gear, you got to knock it off because this is like a shrink fit, if you want to call it that, on this flywheel. Okay, so to get this ring gear off, I'm going to take and drill a hole kind of in between the gear teeth. Now the manual says a 1/4 inch. I've got I think it was like a 13, a 21/64, just because it's a little bit bigger. And once I get this hole drilled in it, I'm going to take a chisel and basically stick it in between the teeth right there at my drill and cut it and crack this ring gear off. And I'm going to just kind of do it on this side of the camera just because it's over here closer to me. And when you drill, don't drill into your flywheel surface. Okay, so I got this hole drilled. I'm going to take a chisel and stick it down in here. So now I have the ring gear loose. However, it didn't fully crack on me, but it is spinning. So I'm going to take and flip this thing over and just knock it off with a hammer. Okay, so there's the old ring gear off. And you can see where I drilled the hole in it and then ran the chisel into it. When you run this chisel in there, it'll spread this apart. And if you're lucky, it'll crack right here and just come off. If not, you'll have to tap it off like I did. So now, we're going to take some Scotch-Brite, wire brush, whatever we got, and kind of clean this surface up to prepare this to accept the new ring gear. Okay, now on our new ring gear, our starter is going to engage. Whew, that thing's warm. Our starter is going to engage towards the rear side of the ring gear, towards your transmission side. So when you look at your new ring gear, look at your teeth and try to find the chamfer that's larger and put it towards the rear, because these new gears are designed a little differently from the factory. And as for this gear, this flywheel is for a 172 diesel double clutch transmission. This is actually the same ring gear that an 8N runs. So to put this guy onto here, we got to heat this one up to about 350 degrees. Now, you can use like a gas grill or an oven to get it up to temperature if you don't have a torch. Since I have a torch, that's what I'm going to use. And then we'll constantly be checking the temperature. I'm going to go ahead and get my gloves on so that way whenever it's ready to go, I can just grab it and go. If you notice, I have it setting up on wood blocks. That's to kind of insulate it from my table. That way I ain't trying to heat my table up as well. I'm just trying to heat the ring gear. It should heat it a lot faster. Okay, so I'm about 360 degrees right this second. I'm going to pick it up and slide it down onto our flywheel. Okay. Not hot enough. Here, other our flywheels expanded on me, one of the two. Which is a good possibility because it's hot as blazes out here. Okay, let's pick it up and put it on our flywheel. If my flywheel was colder, this should have just slid right on. But it's hot as balls out here right now. When you put this on, be sure you go all the way down flat against that lip. Yeah, that's nice and solid sounding. what I want. And then we'll just verify it, that it's down everywhere. And then we'll let it cool. And when we let that cool, we just want it to naturally cool down, and it'll shrink that gear to the flywheel. But there's a new ring gear installed. Like I say, if I'd have had this piece, you know, cooler, because this was about 100, it's like it's September right now. But here in the south, that don't mean shit. So, flywheel's like 100 degrees. The ring gear was 350, and it's hot as blazes. So when this cools down, I'll get the pilot bearing put in it, and then we'll get this bolted down to the back of the engine. Okay, so now the ring gear's cooled off, we're ready to install our new pilot bearing, and then get this up here onto the engine. Now the pilot bearing for this flywheel, and I believe it's the same for the 4 speeds and the 5-speed non-double clutch, is a 6203. However, if you buy just a 6203, it's going to be an open ball bearing. So you need to get a 6203 that is a sealed bearing. And this goes right in the center. I'm just going to tap it until it's flush. And when we put this flywheel on, each of these bolt holes are at a different angle, so this flywheel will only go on the crank one way. Before you put your flywheel on, be sure you install your block plate. So there's my flywheel up there. Now these bolts are going to torque to 75 to 85 foot-pounds. However, I always like to put red thread locker on mine. And of course, when you tighten these, do it in a crisscross pattern. Okay, and now we're ready to install the clutch. Now, on the double clutch, it is a self-contained clutch. Therefore, this is not a friction surface. That's why this looks the way it does, because this does not matter no more. That's all we have to do to this flywheel now. Was the pilot bearing and the new ring gear. So now we're going to install the clutch assembly. Now on these dual clutches, they come assembled from your manufacturer. And there's pretty much no adjustment to be made because you have to have all of these special fixtures to adjust these things. So you're pretty much just going to go ahead and just stick it on there like that and bolt it down. Now your bolts that go here are going to get torqued down to 15 foot-pounds, and these actually have lock washers, so there's no need for Loctite on these. And as far as I know, there is no clutch alignment tool. It pretty much just centers itself in the flywheel itself. Alright, 15 foot-pounds, still in a crisscross pattern. Okay, so there's our clutch installed. And if you kind of ever wondered how these work, whenever you push your clutch pedal and your throwout bearing hits these three fingers, this actually pushes the main clutch, which is the front disc that releases the transmission from the engine. When you go all the way down, your throwout bearing will hit these three fingers, which will then pull this plate to disengage your PTO. That's why you get the two steps on the double clutch. Like I say, I don't know if there's an alignment tool or not. I just kind of look in there. I just kind of look in here, it looks pretty centered. Now, one thing that I did to help line this up when it comes time to put this back on the tractor, I took this clutch and stuck it on the transmission and made sure these two splines lined up. And I basically used a hole up here on the rear of the motor where the transmission would bolt to as a reference point for a pressure plate bolt. And so when I had this on the transmission, I marked where this bolt was in relation to the bolt here on the back of the engine block. So whenever I go to put this on the transmission, it should just slide right in. That way I'm not sitting there fighting, trying to line up two different input shafts and the transmission to the engine as a whole. It should just all line up and go. Probably have to wiggle it a little bit, but it shouldn't fight me. But this is now ready to be installed onto our tractor.